Welcome back, one and all. It's another episode of Hamlet at Bardfest 2019, the podcast. I'm your host and the director of Hamlet at Bardfest in 2019, Doug Powers. We're devoting this episode to some guidelines or rules or laws, if you will, for how to play Shakespeare for actors. And we're calling it Speak the Speech. So first off, let me remind everyone that Bardfest this year runs October 17th through the 27th, and we will be performing at the Indie Fringe Theater. Hamlet specifically will be on the Basile stage at the Indie Fringe Theater, but the festival will be using both stages, as well as the District Theater a little farther down on Mass Ave for the 4 shows, which again, in addition to Hamlet, are Two Gents, which is an adaptation of Two Gentlemen of Verona, Henry IV, Part 1, and a youth production of The Tempest. So those are the dates to mark on your calendar, the 17th through the 27th of October. Coming up July 25th is the first of the 2 Hamlets in Indianapolis's Year of the Hamlets, the one from Indianapolis Shakespeare Company. And that runs again from July 25th to August 3rd at Riverside Park, which is a new location for Indie Shakes. But be sure to check them out, and then come and check out ours in October as well. The Noblesville production of Macbeth also runs July 25th to August 3rd, and that's at Federal Hill Commons, just off of downtown in Noblesville. And then Garfield Shakespeare Company's As You Like It will run August 16th through the 31st, and that is, again, directed by Carrie Shea, who played Hamlet in 2016. And again, if you are aware of any other Shakespeare productions coming up around the area, drop me a line, let me know, and I will make sure to get them into the announcements. So for our next feature, we like to, every week, if we can, include an odd word of the week. Again, early modern English has some differences from what we speak today, so I like to give everybody a bit of a heads up before they go see both of the Hamlets coming up about some of the words that we might find unusual they're going to hear in a production of Hamlet. And for this week, the word is orison. Right after Hamlet runs into Ophelia following his to be or not to be soliloquy, he says, "Nymph, in thy orisons be all my sins remembered." The further implications of that line are open to interpretation, but orisons are simply prayers. According to the text, Polonius has given Ophelia a prayer book to have open and to seem to be reading when she, quote-unquote, accidentally runs into Hamlet. And so he sees her with this prayer book and says, "In thy orisons be all my sins remembered." And again, you can play with that in all sorts of different ways, and I hope we will. But by orison, he simply means in your prayers. For our underplayed Hamlet moment of the week, I refer us to Act 4, Scene 5, when Laertes returns from France and confronts Claudius because he thinks Claudius is responsible for the death of his father Polonius. Now, I've seen a number of productions in which Laertes comes in to confront Claudius, but Laertes is not armed in any way. He says he's about to take revenge for Polonius' death upon Claudius. Claudius refers to it as a rebellion. Laertes is there for the express purpose of killing Claudius. And the rabble of Danes outside, according to the text, has said they want Laertes to be king. Now, he's not going to overthrow Claudius by giving him a stern talking to, right? I think for that moment, he has to be armed. He has to be ready to kill Claudius, which is, of course, why Gertrude is so keen on stepping between them. And I've lost track of how many productions I've seen where Laertes comes in and he's shouting at Claudius, but he's not. There's no real threat there, and that's just puzzling to me. So, moving on to how does one play Shakespeare, and how and why is it different from playing, say, a modern playwright? There are certain playwrights that have such a particular style in their writing that it would lend itself to having a particular style of acting. And Shakespeare is certainly one of those, as well as just the fact that you're acting a play that was originally performed more than 400 years ago. Necessarily, things have changed culturally, linguistically, and there are just things that, most modern plays are not written in verse, for example. And so there are ways in which it is incumbent upon an actor to perform it differently. It's relevant to this week in our production because the first thing we're doing in our process is this week I am showing any members of the cast who can make it the Royal Shakespeare Company's Playing Shakespeare video series from about 1982. And styles of acting have changed even since then, so there are some differences in what they do and what we would do. But the basic principles of how one acts Shakespeare, there's really no better resource that I know of. And they're presented by John Barton, who at the time was the primary directors of the RSC, and they're absolutely brilliant. And so I'm going to be showing them to the cast, just as I did last year with my cast for Merchant. So that's coming up this week, so it seemed a good time to talk about what various people think and what I think are some of the particulars when approaching a Shakespeare play as an actor. So there's a famous, at least famous in certain circles, meme I've seen going around that reportedly, at least, is Dame Judi Dench's set of thoughts on how to play Shakespeare. And hers, rule number 1, remember it's a play, not reality. 2, obey the meter. 3, start scenes, which I take to mean come in hot, have all your preparation done and know why you're entering the scene, what you want, and go after it. Her 4th rule is to earn a pause. Don't stick in a whole lot of pauses all over the place. If you're going to pause, make sure it's an earned one. 5, don't separate. 6, drive through the speech, which is very important, especially in a long speech. Your character has a place he or she is trying to get to. Get there. Have the entire speech drive to that point and go after what you want. Her 7th rule is antithesis pauses up at the ends of lines, which is just another way of stating Barton's rule about make sure you are hitting those antitheses. Her 8th rule is economy, simplicity, and negotiate with humor. Keep it simple, I suppose. Her 9th rule is you don't have to carry the message, the play does it for you. Again, trust the text. And then her final rule is trust the play and your casting. You're there for a reason. Play has everything you need. Just let it do its work. Shakespeare has a set of his own that appears in Hamlet. We've actually, in our adaptation, cut most of this. There's a line or two of it left, but it's extremely good advice. It's one of the places where we perhaps, arguably, might hear Shakespeare's voice in his work most clearly, because it's Hamlet giving advice to the players how to speak the passage that he's inserted into The Murder of Gonzago. And the lines are, speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. But if you mouth it, as many of our players do, I had as lief the town crier spoke my lines. Nor do not saw the air too much with your hand thus, but use all gently. For in the very torrent, tempest, and as I may say, the whirlwind of your passion, you must acquire and beget a temperance that may give it smoothness. Oh, it offends me to the soul to hear a robustious periwig-pated fellow tear a passion to tatters, to very rags, to split the ears of the groundlings, who for the most part are capable of nothing but inexplicable dumb shows and noise. I would have such a fellow whipped for o'erdoing termagant. It out-Herods Herod. Pray you avoid it. Be not too tame, neither, but let your own discretion be your tutor. Suit the action to the word to the action, with this special observance, that you o'erstep not the modesty of nature. For anything so o'erdone is from the purpose of playing, whose end, both at the first and now, was and is to hold as 'twere the mirror up to nature, to show virtue her own feature, scorn her own image, and the very age and body of the time his form and pressure. Now this overdone, or come tardy off, though it make the unskilful laugh, cannot but make the judicious grieve. The censure of the which one must in your allowance o'erweigh a whole theatre of others. Oh, there be players, I love this bit. Oh, there be players that I have seen play and heard others praise, and that highly, not to speak it profanely, that neither having the accent of Christians, nor the gait of Christian, pagan, nor man, have so strutted and bellowed that I have thought some of nature's journeymen had made men, and not made them well, they imitated humanity so abominably. And let those that play your clowns speak no more than is set down for them. For there be of them that will themselves laugh to set on some quantity of barren spectators to laugh too, though in the meantime some necessary question of the play be then to be considered. That's villainous, and shows a most pitiful ambition in the fool that uses it. Hamlet's rather distinctive carrying on a bit. It's rather long, but it's solid advice. I mean, as they establish in the Playing Shakespeare series, you could just as easily give more or less that same set of advice to a modern actor. It's all about being truthful, being honest, being lifelike, not too understated nor overstated. So it's sound advice. Out of all of these, I have a set that also quite closely resembles John Barton's, but this is so this comes out of largely what I learned last year directing Merchant of Venice, and these were things that I seemed to find the most helpful in helping actors along, particularly those who may not have had a lot of experience with Shakespeare. So my first rule of playing Shakespeare is don't panic, with apologies to Douglas Adams. But remember that Will has your back. Will was an actor. Will was a dramatist. Will worked with actors. He knew what he was doing. Just let him do it. He's got your back. You don't have to fight him. My second rule is forget the 400 plus years. Your character has never done or said any of this until each moment it happens through you in each rehearsal and in each performance. 3, this is an important rule. Know what you are saying. Look up any unfamiliar words and all references. Shakespeare's characters make a lot of classical references. Look them up. Know why. It's one thing that I find important to remember about those references. Shakespeare put them there because to his audience, they would actually help clarify the character's meaning and the character's state of mind and what the character was saying. Because people who were educated in that time would have been educated by reading the classics. So they would have known all these stories. We don't, but they did. So it's important to remember as an actor that story is that reference to a character is not there just to be like the Star Trek Next Generation episode is not there just to be nonsensical to us, Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. We don't know what that means. But when a character in Shakespeare makes a reference to a character from the classics, Shakespeare's audience would, or at least the educated among Shakespeare's audience, would have known what that meant. And so it's there to clarify, which means we as actors have to know what we're saying. We have to know why that reference is there and what that reference means. Even if most of our audience won't, we have to. And if there's any particularly difficult sentence structure, you've got to untangle that too. You've got to know exactly what you're saying. I've been in a lot of Shakespeare rehearsals and I've attended a lot of Shakespeare plays where it's clear there's an actor on stage who has no idea what he or she is saying. And if the actor doesn't, how am I to, as an audience member, to get what's supposed to be happening? So my fourth rule would be to dig up as many choices as you can find in each passage and then choose the one that's most interesting for the scene and for the overall arc of the story. There are always myriad choices that one can make. And I think, in general, it's a good idea to say, well, which one is the most interesting? Obviously, you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot by making a choice in an earlier scene that hamstrings you in a later scene. You have to keep the overall arc of the story in mind. But in general, try to find which choice out of all these possibilities is the most interesting and play that one. And then my fifth rule is to raise the stakes as high as you can and then raise them higher. And repeat doing that until the production closes. I think I've said it before in this podcast that I don't think it's possible to raise the stakes too high in a Shakespeare scene. I think you can always raise them higher. The sort of half joke I made with my Merchant cast last year, which I think I may have mentioned this before too, is the stakes in every scene of that play start at life and death and go up from there. And that's arguably even more true in Hamlet, because the fate of an entire nation rests on the outcome of that play. So always raise the stakes higher. My sixth rule is to find the why and the how always, and know that nothing is ever only exposition. If a speech looks very expository, find out why your character is giving that much exposition. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? And what do you want? Always. It's not just I'm here to provide information. It's I want something. I'm after something. There's a reason I'm doing this, and you have to find it. My seventh rule is one of my favorites. I tell actors to imagine that the play was written by a particularly precocious eighth grader, which by that I mean, if anything in the text looks even remotely like it could possibly be a sex joke, just assume it's a sex joke, because it almost always is. There were a few places last year, too, where there were ones that were like, well, that might not have been one in the original text, but we can make it one. Which I was okay with doing because you're always going to lose some. There are certain things, rhymes don't work, so your pun doesn't work between early modern English and current English. So you're going to lose some of the jokes, right, between that and cultural context changing. So there are going to be some you're going to lose. So I have, particularly in a comedy, I saw no problem with adding a couple. I have a feeling Will would not have minded, just given some of the jokes that he actually did include. But if there's any chance, looking at that text, well, you could look at it in a particular way that might be a sex joke. Yeah, just assume it is. The eighth rule that I have is pretty important. Enunciate and don't rush. Your brilliance isn't brilliance if we can't understand you. I've seen actors performing Shakespeare who it seems almost as to me almost as if they want to make it clear how well they understand the text by just blowing through it. And say, well, that's great. You understand the text, but I, as the audience member, don't now because you're going too fast. And therefore, whatever you may be doing might be brilliant, but we'll never know because we can't understand what you're saying. The ninth rule that I have is really more just a pet peeve of mine. It is to note and note well that the phrase, good my lord, is the same as my good lord. Good my lord does not equal good my lord. There is no comma in there. Good my lord just means my good lord. It's just a word order thing. You are calling someone my lord, and you are saying that that person is good. It's not, oh yes, what you have just said is good, comma, my lord. No, that's not what it is, unless it's punctuated that way. It does happen occasionally where it actually is punctuated that way, in which case it does mean that, but that's different. If it's not punctuated that way, if there is no comma, good my lord is, for example, I, good my lord. Like it's all one thing, good my lord. So that's, if you ever are performing Shakespeare and you have that phrase, make sure you don't insert a comma where there isn't one. My 10th rule is to drop skipped syllables completely, not to swallow them. So if you have think, on apostrophe T, that expression has two syllables. Think on't. It does not have two syllables plus a little bit. Think on it. That's a lot of people try to sort of swallow that remaining syllable or that excluded syllable. Think on it. There are lots of other examples where words are elided and they try to preserve some remnant of the missing vowel. And no, think on't has two syllables now. If he wanted three, he would have not elided it. Maybe think on it, or he would have given it, put it into a line where to get to your 10 syllables of verse, you need think on it. But if it's think on't, then it's just two syllables. And then my 11th rule, take your pauses in general at the ends of verse lines. My corollary is except when you don't. Because in general, yes, you want to do that, but there are going to be places where you're not going to want to do that, and you're free to do that. But like with ignoring the verse, in other ways, you should be conscious of what you're doing. You should do it on purpose. To say, yes, I know this is the rule, and I'm going to break it here, and here's why. Same thing, to pronounce each instance of a word as dictated by the meter. Again, except when you don't. If you're going to not do that, do so consciously. But there are all kinds of places where a word will be pronounced not as we would pronounce it, and probably not even as a regular speaker of early modern English would have pronounced it. But the meter dictates that it should be pronounced with additional syllables or with fewer syllables, either way, but with a differing number of syllables, or putting the stress in a place that we wouldn't, because that's what the meter says, and it means something different that way, or at least meant something different that way. And so that's how, in general, I think you should pronounce it. So anyway, those are sort of my own distillation of these other rules, as well as just my experience with helping actors get through some of the hurdles and become more familiar with the particulars of playing Shakespeare. So if you find yourself in a Shakespeare production, hopefully you can put some of that to use. And again, I cannot recommend highly enough watching the Playing Shakespeare series. It is available on YouTube. It's a VHS transfer, so the video quality is not always brilliant in the YouTube videos, but they are all there, all 9 episodes. And I highly suggest you watch them. They are available on our YouTube channel. There's a playlist of them. So you can go to our YouTube channel and find all 9 episodes of Playing Shakespeare, as well as a lot of other good resources for how one acts Shakespeare. So again, we're October 17th through the 27th. We are on the Basile stage at the Indy Fringe Theater, which is on St. Clair Street. There will be 2 gents will be in the Indy 11 stage on the Indy Fringe Theater, and then Henry IV Part 1 and The Tempest will both be at the District Theater down on Mass Ave. So again, October 17th through the 27th. Be on the lookout for ticket links. You can go to indybardfest.com and keep up with events there. When the tickets are available, you'll be able to link to them from there. And as far as our production of Hamlet, we are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, YouTube, you name it. Just search for Hamlet Bardfest 2019. You'll be able to find us from that. You should be, at least. And of course, this podcast is available on pretty much any podcasting platform that you use, and also available on YouTube. So you can check out our YouTube channel for episodes of this podcast as well. So once again, thanks for listening, and we will hear from you again next week.